Jefferson Robbins with NCW Life. It's the first contested mayor's race in about 12 years, and the candidate who joins me as a candidate for Wenatchee mayor is one of the guys who was running 12 years ago. Bryan Campbell, thanks a lot for being here.
Thanks, Jefferson. Pleasure to be here.
Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, Bryan, and your background, and what do you think makes you fitted for this job?
Well, as I've said before, I'm a Wenatchee native. Love the town and love the people, and want to help. I want to be a true public servant, not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. And if you look at the history and what I enjoy doing, it's community service. I just said over 100 years. It's actually 150 years when I added them all up, the different organizations I've been involved with, and I just love that. I love helping people and making their lives better, and that's why I decided to enter the race again this time. I really wasn't planning on it, but recently people have been coming to me and asking me to step up. It's kind of a higher calling for me, that this is my job. I should be filing for Social Security, but I'm looking for a job. Again, I want to do my best to. I think we need to rise up, work together, to save our small town, because it is rapidly changing in the last few years. And it was exacerbated by COVID. People got in their own worlds. The country, everybody's been divided. I like walking down the middle and working with everybody, but it's really become divided. And we've been focused. We've got so many projects going, some great projects that the town has going. Want to be part of that, and see those projects onto fruition and get to the end of those in a great way. And but with that, we've been so focused on some of these projects that I think funding-wise, we've been hesitant to increase our police force, which needs to happen. The public is really feeling it with tax increases, and they've started to have enough. They've been showing up to city council meetings lately. One I would recommend everybody watch is go to Wenatchee TV, YouTube, and click on live and look at the September 14th, 2023 council meeting. And that's who I'm answering to. The people have really been fed up that the crime and the businesses being driven out, the homelessness. People are really upset about that, and we don't want to see this beautiful town that's the best place in the world to live go down that road.
Well, your statement there ties homelessness together with crime. Is it a crime to be homeless? And should our response to homelessness be one of police enforcement?
I think it's a combination. There's a lot of compassion for the homeless, and that's part of our problem right now, is that we're getting homeless from other areas, and we need to take care of our homeless, absolutely. Wenatchee's homeless come first in my mind. If they're coming in from Spokane or Tri-Cities or Seattle, because we are so compassionate, we've got some great services for the people that need them. And there's a lot of issues involved. There's, of course, mental health issues, drug issues, kind of go together. We've got to address that, and we've got to get those people back into society and be productive members of society. And I've interviewed a lot of the homeless, and most of them do have drug or mental illness issues. There are a few local ones, homeless people that have they've lost their jobs. And sometimes they've lost their jobs because of chemical dependency, but they're back on the right track. I know of a couple in particular that were about to have job interviews and try to get back in and get some affordable housing. And I'm pretty excited for those people to get back on track. But government tends to have a tendency to kind of put them out of sight, out of mind, so that the general population doesn't run across and see what looks like small internment camps. They're concerned that once people get into those situations that they don't get out. And that's where the resources need to be spent, in my mind, is making sure that we're working with those people to get them back on track. And you can't just go and buy them a house and say, there you go. I mean, there's a lot of lifestyle changes that need to take place, and a lot of work, a lot of therapy that needs to work, social services to get people back on track, and that's where the money, I think, needs to be spent.
You said, I think, that Wenatchee's homeless need to come first. Well, homelessness is a migratory experience. People are moved, or circumstances move them from one place to another when they have no shelter. So how do you distinguish between Wenatchee homeless and homeless who happen to be in Wenatchee?
One of the things that we needed was low barrier shelters, because when people come in and they have a substance abuse problem, they can't get into some of the facilities because they require that they be clean before they get into those facilities. And so we needed the low barrier facilities to get them in. Once we get them in, then we can work on getting them actual rehabilitation. But in that process, with the low barrier shelters, they do have the ability to identify the people coming in, fingerprint, whatever it takes, so that they can track them through the system. And I don't believe that's happening. And so you end up, they get lost in the system. Similar to coming across the border and not identifying who people are. You've got to find out who you're dealing with. And they'll tell you where they're from. There have been studies, the point-in-time studies of the homeless population. They find out where they're from. Some won't answer, but a lot of them are coming from out of the area. And we need to address that. And if they are coming from out of the area, we have to find out where they're coming from, find out if they've been sent by the other cities, because that's happening too. Some of them get sent back. I mean, there needs to be a process there. You can't just take everybody that all of a sudden shows up on the street and say, yeah, we're going to take care of you, because if you become a sanctuary city for the homeless, you're going to get a lot of homeless.
Does that mean you deny services to people who can't show quote-unquote residency in Wenatchee? I mean, this is a difficult question.
That's a very difficult question. That's why I say with the low barrier shelters, at least you have the ability to identify who they are and where they are. And that is the toughest question. You certainly don't just say, sorry, you know, we can't take care of you, you're going to have to freeze out here. No, we have to take care of everybody, but there has to be a process where we try to get the services for those people in the cities where they're from. We just can't be overwhelmed with that. It drains all of our resources, and we've got some sort of a balance there. But yes, we have that compassion. We have to take care of people and get them back on their feet.
You mentioned the perceived unsightliness of some shelter outreach programs. I think maybe you're speaking about the safe parks that the city has opened on either end of Wenatchee.
Yeah.
Do you see the Safe Park project continuing if you're mayor? Is that an obligation that you see the city having to maintain, or do you want to see it ended or changed?
I see a labeling issue a lot of times with those. I would call those unsafe parks. If you look at Safe Park 2, they've already been a couple of vehicles burned. There's drugs going on in those safe parks. They're supposed to be drug-free, but there's not really any way to monitor that. So they're in the low barrier shelters because they're not clean, so to speak, as far as drugs go. And therefore, you can expect that it's continuing while they're there. So the more you enable that population to stay in that state of condition that they're in, the more apt they are to stay in that condition. So I want to see them get circulated back out into society. The way it's going, we'll end up with Safe Park 3 and Safe Park 4. And the problem, as we've seen it, just keeps growing to where our homeless population now, I've been told, is very similar to what, per capita, what Seattle's is. And that's very concerning. So we tend to throw a lot of money, always throw a lot of money at the problem and feel like, okay, we've done our good deed. But that money is not being tracked and traced down to make sure it's really beneficial to the people that it's intended to benefit. A lot of it gets eaten up in administrative costs and processing costs. And we need to do a better job of making sure that the funds that are spent, we've got some good metrics to determine the outcomes and make sure that the money's going to the right place and the people are being taken care of.
Bryan, with the cost of housing in Wenatchee and elsewhere, it's a real problem in Washington. The even very young professionals with good jobs, medical people, people in education, are having a hard time finding housing that can fit into their budget. We're talking about $1,200 to $1,900 for very small apartments if they're available. We're talking about median home prices that are north of $500,000 and rising. So what part can the city play in trying to get a supply of affordable housing in Wenatchee?
Well, that's a really touchy subject for me because affordable housing has been at all of the forums that I've been to and everything. Affordable housing is number one, and it is. Crime and affordable housing kind of go together. And the homeless kind of fit into that as well. These people that are trying to get back into housing, it's just financially almost impossible for them to do it without subsidies. So the affordable housing part of that is so important. And we did have, as you're aware, 84 units of affordable housing in the system just coming online, just south of the high school. And for some reason, I mean, at our last interview, that's one thing we talked about, and everybody was for affordable housing, 100%. We had an obligation, to provide that affordable housing. And less than a month after that interview, the city council voted to eliminate all 4 of those 84 affordable housing units. And the developer was enriched with millions of dollars in equity because now they can charge their market rates of approximately $1,650 a month instead of somebody came in and they made $4,000 a month. 30% of their income can only go towards housing, so that would be $1,200 a month, and they would have to offer those units at $1,200 a month. So that differential of $450 a month at a capitalization rate of 6.5%, i.e. a rate of return of an investor, it equates to $6.9 million in equity on that cash flow. So that was just so disappointing to see the developers get that kind of money, and potentially 84 families lost the ability to get affordable housing. And that's just mind-boggling that we would do that, because that is so important. And concessions were made in order to get those units online quickly, and to lose those right in the middle of this crisis really was heartbreaking.
We should talk about a little bit more about your experience in government and civics. You were a city council member prior to your first run for mayor, and now this run for mayor for 4 years, I believe.
Yeah, 2012 to 2016.
And you were also involved with the city in other ways. You've done reserve work?
Yeah, I was a police reserve from 2001 to 2014.
And you mentioned, I think I'm going to challenge you on the math, 150 years of volunteer service. Yeah. How do you come to that figure?
You just added up the different places that I've been. I was been with Wenatchee Rotary for 35 years. The Chelan County Fire District 1 for 32 years. Crime Stoppers I started in 2001 because that's when the graffiti first started showing up, that I was disappointed with that. And so there's 22 years there. It adds up pretty quickly. But I was in the Big Brother Big Sister program back in 1985, and my little brother, who was 9 at the time, is now full grown with a family, 6'4", 280 pounds. That's my little brother. I've been involved with that kind of a process, the Wenatchee Rotary Lunch Buddy program at Lewis and Clark School. I followed my lunch buddy from 3rd grade to now. He just graduated this year, which was awesome that I was there for that. So that's the kind of compassion that I have for those that were fatherless. Both of them were fatherless, and one of them motherless. And that I can provide that mentorship for them to become good, productive members of society, and I'm so proud of both of them. But that's the kind of compassion that I have for the community, and my joy is providing happiness and success to other people. That's just how I've been.
I want to ask you about some things that were noted while you were on council back in 2015. At that time, the city attorney's office said that you'd been overzealous in responding to police and fire emergencies. You were not a reserve officer at this time, but the city attorney wrote to you that, quote, "The police department does not desire your involvement in their calls for service and believes that it is at minimum a distraction and at worst a life safety hazard." You were noted at scenes of crimes or places where crimes had been reported, and the police stated through this letter from Steve Smith that was a complication to their work. Did you make the right decisions then? Have you rethought your approach to when a crime happens, I don't necessarily need to be there?
No, I haven't. A couple weeks ago, actually helped save a house and a couple of Harley Davidsons on Jefferson Street because I was talking to a citizen at the end of the street, and that citizen noticed the smoke, and I could tell immediately that it was a fire that had just started by the color of the smoke and how high up it was in the air. And so I responded there, and between me and the homeowner, we were able to save the house and the Harleys. Didn't do so well with the travel trailer because the flames were coming out through the top of it. But when the fire department arrived, they expected to have a fully involved house fire because the trailer was parked within 3 feet of the eave of the house. And so that's kind of what normally happens. So no, I wouldn't change a thing. I've been inserting myself, as they say, into incidents like that. I call that helping my fellow citizens as a good Samaritan. And I formed my One Wenatchee group just for that reason, so I could continue to do that. And the One Wenatchee group, we're focused on public safety and helping out the community. So that's what you call one of those October surprises. That was a election tactic that was used to make it look like I was not wanted. But I think if you talk to the person, the officer that I received the letter from, thanking them for being there when he was rolling around in the street with a suspect that was going for his gun on Gren Street, I think you'd probably get a different opinion of that. All the officers I know loved having somebody there that had their back and wouldn't get in the way. I was there to help. So
you feel like this disclosure in 2015 was made on behest of the Kuntz administration, who was running for re-election at that time with you as challenger?
Oh, I'm not going to, throw that out, but I'm just saying that the timing of that was kind of interesting because at that point I've been doing that, responding to incidents since I was, 20 years old? So I've been doing it for 44 years. So the timing was kind of interesting, yeah.
Well, Bryan, Dominic Bonney, a local investigative reporter, in his blog this week disclosed a photo that you posted on Facebook with a Wenatchee Valley Fire Department response vehicle. According to Dominic's reporting, the department says they asked you not to use that photo for campaign purposes, but you were wearing a campaign pin and you posted the photograph to your Facebook. Was posting the photo the right decision when you'd been asked not to?
Once again, like I told Dominic in my response, once again, the information is incorrect. I showed up at the fire station to take pictures from the outside. My photographer thought it'd be really cool to have a picture of the fire trucks in the bay. I said, you can't do that. And he was kind of persistent about, well, why not? Didn't understand the rules. And I thought, okay, I'll get him the answer that he needs to hear. So I said, okay, you go ahead. Because he said, can I ask him? Can I ask him? I said, okay, go ahead. So we went and asked him. And of course, they came out and said, we can't be perceived as supporting any particular candidate. We have to remain neutral. And they, according to the revised code of Washington, the RCW, they cannot, use their apparatus or any of their products in the advertising. So no problem. I knew that was the case. I knew the law, I guess, better than they did. So we went back outside, and they said, well, let's just get a picture by the SUV. That's a whole different thing. And then we weren't told not to do that. So, I mean, they're tying the two things together, but they're not the same. Took that picture and posted it. There's no problem with that. It's not an issue. And it was not in response to, you can't take that picture. So I know how reporting is. You have to get some attention out there and say, mayoral candidate receives backlash for posting, it's like the only backlash I got was inappropriate post, which I got from Cam Demestri, who posted on my site that he encouraged me to take the picture down, and I came out of left field to me. And then he quoted an RCW as to insinuate that I was in violation of the RCW.
Mr. Demestri, the fire commissioner for Wenatchee Valley Fire Department.
And I'm not in violation of the RCW. The RCW is specifically written so that somebody, once they are in a public office or an elected official, that they can't use their department, their facilities, their resources in order to back their candidacy. I'm not an elected official, I'm not a public official, and therefore there is no reason that I can't use that picture. It's public property, and it's in a public location, and anybody can take a picture of a fire apparatus or police apparatus behind them. There's no problem with it at all. And we knew that, so we immediately called the Public Disclosure Commission and sent them the photo, and they said no problem, which we knew there was. But the result of it looks like, once again, just like back when I ran last time, they tried to make it look like I'm this renegade loose cannon, and all I'm out there doing is being a good Samaritan and helping the public. But when people feel threatened, then they jump up and try to make it look like I'm doing something wrong.
One more question, Bryan, based on some of Dominic's other reporting. He also mentioned your relationship with the New America Performing Arts Center. And back during the period when the center was requiring record of vaccination to enter for COVID vaccination, you got into I think it's best described as either a dispute or a boundary violation in terms of going into an event without having that record of vaccination to display. I guess I'd phrase the question this way. Was the proof of vaccination in general something that you opposed? Did you feel like that was a bad idea during the COVID-19 pandemic? And did you feel that it was not your place to need to comply with that?
No, absolutely not. And I did comply with it. That's, again, the information was incorrect. That's why I saw that one coming. Because Dominic Bonney sent me an email saying, hey, I want to do some questions on the mayoral race, which means a hit piece. So I knew that was coming, and I knew what it was. So I went ahead and posted first the way it actually happened. So all you would have to do is go and look at the post that I posted, and that has all the truth and facts. And then the spin came later.
But were you in fact asked not to return to the Performing Arts Center for a period of time based on your response to that situation?
Yes. Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate because we love the PAC.
But you don't feel like it was fault on your part?
Well, I didn't break any of the rules. So the way it happened is when we showed up there, we'd just gotten off a cruise. And of course, you have to be, at that time, you had to be vaccinated to be on the cruises. And I told them we're going on another one in three days. I've got all the EMED vaccination negative tests on my phone. I've got everything else on my phone. And I wondered, we showed up in our Appalarian gear because we're the booster organization for the Apple Blossom Festival. So I was pretty surprised to have a change in the protocol without being notified. That's what was really frustrating. So I was asking questions, and I know you're not supposed to ask questions, but I was. I said, how come we weren't notified as the booster organization for the Apple Blossom Festival when all of our tickets were purchased through the Apple Blossom Festival? It was the Apple Blossom musical that we're coming to. How could it be that we weren't notified? That was beyond me. I didn't understand how that could happen. And it turns out later on they said, where we got the tickets, they were notified, but they didn't turn around and notify us, that was the real disconnect. But in the process, they said, yeah, we posted it on our website and on, and they were going to have this change. And in the process of asking the questions, I handed them my card, and they handed it back to me. And then I was looking for my wife's picture of her card on my phone, because that would have been sufficient. But in the meantime, an acquaintance came, I think he's in his 80s, and he was getting the same question about he had to have his card. And obviously he had one, he didn't have it with him, because it's not one of the things you think about. That was a change that had just taken place. It's never been asked for before. Nobody in the history has ever been asked for their vaccination card at any event. That was something that just brand new. And so of course people don't usually carry those things around with them. But anyway, he was, I would call it a panic attack, because his partner was already inside. The play was about to start, and he was kind of pacing back and forth and frantic. And I was seriously concerned about his medical situation. And I thought, this is obviously a little bit over the top, what's important, his health or a card that he doesn't have with him that we know he has. And so I said, this is ridiculous. And I put my hand on his shoulder. And I said, let's go in. Had to get him to his partner.
Well, let me ask you this. If you're concerned about a medical situation happening in front of you, is the best response then to take the person to a musical, or is it to seek medical attention?
It's to get, the reason for his concern was that he couldn't get to his partner. So it was, all I had to do is get him through the door to her so that then they could figure things out, do whatever they needed to do. And then I was going to come back out and finish looking for my wife's card on the phone. But I hadn't gotten to that point yet. Unbeknownst to me, when we went in, my wife actually followed us in. Didn't even know. I was planning on getting him in there to his partner and coming back out and dealing with what was going on. So it was, the facts were all twisted. I didn't violate any policies. I showed my card. I conformed, but I did ask questions.
Let's talk about the current campaign.
Yeah.
The newest campaign signs that you have put out, Bryan, have the motto, "Fighting for your faith, family, and freedom."
Yes.
Can you explain that motto?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Again, I'm not here with what my plan is for the city. I'm here for what the people's plan is for the city. And the people are telling me the things that they've felt that they've been losing is they've been losing their faith. They haven't been able to go to church, during COVID. That was a real big thing for a lot of people. That was, taboo to be in the big congregations, obviously, unless you're going to the grocery store or to a bar. But couldn't go to the gym, couldn't go to church. So people were really very upset about that. And our faith, our family, and freedom seems to be the three pillars that people really feel like have been taken down in the last 2 or 3 years. And so that's why I put that there, because I'm fighting for the people. And so I'm fighting for their faith, family, and freedom. Even if they're atheists, that's their faith, So whatever their faith is, I'm there to support their right to exercise that faith and to take care of their family and where they need to take care of their family and their freedom. So that's what I'm fighting for, and so that's why that motto is there.
You phrased that in terms of the COVID pandemic response, the emergency orders that, again, barred people from having large gatherings and from meeting in public spaces in large numbers. What power does a Wenatchee mayor have over that kind of restriction when it's imposed by the state?
I can't tell you exactly what that power is. I know that the state, states' rights, the governor has powers, the federal government has powers. Which power trumps which power in which situation? I'd have to spend a lot of time with the city attorney to figure out what power the mayor has to override or how they're obligated to conform to what the state says. And then I know the sheriff has a different level of power, which is kind of, I think, above that as well. And that was a touchy time. There's some of the sheriffs were coming out and saying, I'm not going to enforce these mandates because it goes back to the Constitution, and which document do you use to decide how you're going to act? And I think the sheriffs are going right back to the Constitution because that's what they agreed to uphold when they took their office.
Well, would you see yourself as mayor saying Wenatchee's not going to abide by directive A, B, or C that comes from Olympia?
Once the city attorney decides what the best route is to go, there's going to be a lot of communication there because we have to look at the legal ramifications of what we're doing. So I can't take some personal choice or even what the public's choice is if it's not within the law. So I have to follow the law. We just have to figure out which law is the superseding law. And that's where I say that the attorney has to be involved in that. And I don't think there's any consensus on that right now. I don't think anybody can tell you, who has the ultimate power. I guess the Supreme Court has to decide some of those things.
Courts have almost unilaterally decided in favor of Governor Inslee in terms of the public health emergency orders.
Right. Yeah.
Just to round it out, Bryan, what's the state of Wenatchee right now from your perspective? What's the city look like? How could it be better?
I think we're at a real critical point. From looking at that council meeting on September 14th, looking at the council meeting on August 10th, following the July 13th council meeting where they got rid of the affordable housing. There was a lot of backlash from that at the August 10th council meeting. More information came out. There's questions about what the council even knew when they made their decision on July 13th, and if they had all the information. There's a lot of concerns about what's happening at that level. So from what I'm seeing from the people, what the people are telling me, they're just at the breaking point. There's the people talking about moving out of town. There's the businesses that are being run out of town. And I was downtown, I think it was First Friday, and taking a picture of the front of the Mills Brothers building. And I noticed there wasn't just one boarded up pane of glass, there were 3. And somebody told me it was broken into 1 or 2 more times in the same week. And that's just absolutely devastating to see something like that happen. And that's what business owners are telling me, that there's a lot of problems with the crime, with the homelessness. The customers are saying, you know, it's a lot safer to shop online than to go downtown. We can't have that. So I think we're at a critical point that we've got to do something right away and get this crime under control, and get these problems that they're just growing very rapidly, and the public is scared, and their voices need to be heard, and that's my job as the messenger, to be the voice of the people, to be accountable for the people, to come in and do the people's work and get our town back under control.
What does a city owe to its citizens, Bryan?
I think they owe a lot to their citizens. I mean, the citizens are the electorate that votes them into office. And so what happens to a lot of politicians, I guess they become politicians. They may not be politicians going in, but they become politicians. And they go in with the right reasons and the right intentions. And then quite often they get caught up in kind of their own entity. I mean, there is the own entity, the city, but I mean, there's always a governing body of the town, and it's not who the elected people are usually. It's usually the inner circle. And if you've had an inner circle with a lot of people with a lot of money and a lot of power, and they enjoy that, and there are a lot of benefits to them for that. And once they've had that for 16 or 20 years, they don't want to give it up. And that's what I'm seeing right now, is I'm seeing, I guess I call it the ruling class, really fighting to keep some of their sweetheart deals. And I'm there for the people to provide good deals to all the people. I've got 35,000 people I answer to, not just a small inner circle. So that's my whole point, is I'm more the messenger. I'm there because the people have asked me to be there. Kind of a higher calling, I call it. And rather than filing for Social Security, I'm stepping up because I know with my engagement with the community, you know, they always talk about transparency. Well, that's it right there. If you're engaged with the community, you're transparent. And I know from that what the people's wishes are. And if I didn't do this and, you know, a few years down the road, looked back and said, you know what, I'm not going to forgive myself if I don't step up, knowing that I have the ingredients, the skill set, and what's necessary to get us on the right track and to basically save our small town. Yeah, I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do that.
Bryan Campbell, candidate for mayor of Wenatchee in our next election. Thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you, Jefferson. Appreciate it.
You're watching the NCW Life channel.